It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar on why cybersecurity matters, chemical and pharmaceutical manufacturing executives. This seminar is presented by Siemens and hosted by ETPharma. Digital transformation is revolutionizing many of the industries, and cybersecurity has emerged as a critical concern area, particularly for sectors where security and confidentiality of data is very, very important. Today, we'll go deep into the intricacies of cybersecurity in the context of chemical and pharmaceutical industry, manufacturing particularly, and understand why it is a top priority for the executives working in these industries. I will go on to say that this is the top management and the board agenda for most of the companies. Throughout our session, we will explore the protection against unauthorized access, data breaches, insider threats, and cyber attacks. The evolving nature of phishing and ransomware attacks in the pharma industry will be a major area of concern. We will hear from industry experts who share insights on track and trace quick and effective incident response plans. Together, let's deepen our understanding on why cybersecurity matters and how we can collectively strengthen our defense against cybersecurity threats in manufacturing. Let me also highlight here that we have got a very distinguished panel which has got around 100 years of experience dealing in cybersecurity. I've been managing many of the webinars, and I should compliment both ED and Siemens to put together the distinguished panel. Let me introduce our panel first. Atul Ravkar, Chief Information Security Officer, Serum Institute of India, 30 years experience, both in auditing and cybersecurity. In fact, Atul, like Serum Institute, has been pioneer in the game of cybersecurity. Thank you, Atul, for joining this seminar. We have got Vijay Mishra, Senior General Manager and Chief Information Security Officer, Alchem Laboratories, Dr. Yusuf Hashmi, Group CISO, Jubilant, and again, a very distinguished expert in the area of cybersecurity. Thank you, Dr. Yusuf. In fact, your insight, both from India and globally, will be of tremendous benefit for the community which is going to join for this seminar. We have a great advantage of having Vivek Roy, Business Segment Head, Digital Connectivity, and Power, Siemens Limited. Again, a champion of cybersecurity. In fact, he has been championing the cause of cybersecurity across sector, across industry. And his insights will be very valuable to set the agenda for Indian industry going forward in the area of cybersecurity. It is my indeed a great pleasure and honor for moderating this discussion, which will be being a roadmap for many of the companies forward. To begin with, I will request Vivek to set the context and also highlight to this panel how Siemens is relevant as far as cybersecurity is concerned. Over to you, Vivek.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jain, for moderating this August panel. And also, firstly, let me start with welcoming everybody to this most relevant discussion today, and ETPharma for hosting it. So, why Siemens is, into this foray is because today Siemens is a known name in providing digital transformation solutions across the chemical and the pharmaceutical industry. And as you know that no digital transformation is complete without cybersecurity, because primarily any digital transformation for an enterprise, it means IT and OT, which is manufacturing operation technologies, must come together. And in the quest of coming together, when the data is flowing from OT into IT or IT is flowing into OT, cybersecurity or industrial security is the most important factor in this discussion. And hence, this is the most relevant topic for our discussion today, Mr. Jain. That's how we are
Thank
here.
you very much, Vivek. You have rightly put the context, and let me also reinforce that in all boardroom discussion, this assumes high significance, and I, being part of the pharma industry, it is a very, very highly relevant topic for us. I would request Vivek, Atul, and Bijinder to share an overview of the ever evolving nature of phishing and ransomware attacks targeting pharmaceutical industry. This is industry which is very close to our heart. So first we will start with you, then I will request Atul to take over. Yeah.
Thanks for that question. So if we just go back maybe 5-6 years ago, pre-COVID or a little bit before COVID, the type of attacks that used to happen in the manufacturing, or rather I would say that manufacturing was never the focus of hackers or attackers. Yeah. Post the COVID or post the the COVID-19 situation, there is a 200% jump in the attacks on manufacturing. And there is a reason behind this. Primarily, we feel that manufacturing is more vulnerable to this because you have different types of systems running in manufacturing, and especially in pharmaceutical industry, it is the most vulnerable because of the data thefts that are happening today. So ransomware and phishing are just one or two of the methods in which the attacker actually can access your systems and take important data out of your systems, which is then they could sell it at whatever value, but you have a risk of losing your intellectual property, and that's how it's very, very relevant. So
thank you, Vivek. Atul?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Jain and Vivek. If you see, pharma manufacturing is a very traditional industry. It's been operating since long time, but if you see the focus of entire industry is more on to quality. Manufacturing quality has to be very important. It is gone by GMP practices. It's being inspected all around by various kind of agencies. But if you see the focus on cybersecurity in last many years is very low. And that, is the major reason where if you see the user awareness within the industry, the people who actually operate the machines, people who use computers, they are extremely, unaware about the practices that they need to follow, the hygiene that they need to follow. And that has caused a lot of, kind of turbulence in the industry, especially phishing and ransomware, because attackers are using effectively phishing attacks and then getting into the networks and then putting ransomware and then, further doing damages to the industry. But the basic reason what we saw and we observed is user awareness from security angle. And of course, as you keep on, making people aware about the hygiene of cybersecurity, different kind of advanced phishing attacks are being, used. The techniques being improved. If you see today, QR code attacks are happening. WhatsApp is being used to, get into the network. SMSs, wishing, all kinds of sophisticated, attacks are happening on pharma industry. attackers have figured out that, there's definitely a lack of, awareness. And then that is being exploited as further to gain access and, carry out attacks across pharma. And after COVID, of course, what happened is during COVID, a lot of manufacturing units opened up their networks to access remotely. Employees started, warehouses started, or the distributors started accessing core systems remotely. And those vulnerabilities in the remote access also were exploited after COVID. So significant increase has happened after COVID, and this is the trend we see across the industry.
Thank you very much, Atul. And there cannot be any better person than you. 60% of vaccine production is in India, and serum contribution in vaccine has been very, very high. As you rightly said, that beyond manufacturing, we have to also consider cybersecurity risk for sustained supply of manufacturing. Vijender, your comments, and you would like to build what Atul has said. Over to you, Vijender.
Thank you very much for asking this question. I mean, you know that pharma has been a hot, target for cyber criminals. If you see, pre-pandemic and mainly during pandemic and post-pandemic, you will find many cyber attacks targeted specifically to the pharma industry. Yeah. So phishing and ransomware attacks are constantly evolving, to target the pharma industry. Cyber criminals, use sophisticated techniques to trick employees into revealing sensitive information or clicking on malicious links. That is very common nowadays, and we deal with such incidents on a day-to-day basis nowadays. And these attacks can result in the theft of valuable intellectual property, disruption of your operations, and financial losses as well. So phishing attacks often also use social engineering tactics to appear as legitimate emails from trusted sources. They may also use fake login pages to steal credentials. Ransomware attacks also are becoming very disastrous nowadays. Involving encryption of your data and then asking for a ransom. That is very common nowadays. Yeah. So pharma industry in general is very vulnerable on these attacks, whether you talk about phishing attack or you talk about ransomware attack, due to sensitive nature of the data it handles, and the high value of its intellectual property. Companies must remain vigilant and implement robust cybersecurity measures to protect against these threats. And I always say that one size doesn't fit for every organization. But when you talk about pharma, the data what we have and the data with which we deal on day-to-day basis, that is most valuable for us. That is what we call it, crown of the jewel. And you must have, multi-layer approach to protect your data.
Now we move over to the next question, which is a very relevant question. This is a very high priority for all of us, and government can play a very important role in strengthening cybersecurity in the pharma industry. Can you share some of the policies or programs of the government contain cybersecurity risk? I will start with Atul and then over to you, Atul.
Thank you very much. This is very important question, and government can play a lot of big role in the overall improvement of cybersecurity in the pharma industry. I would like to recall 20 years back where banking industry was there, and banking was not regulated for cybersecurity. If you see, RBI has come out with so many regulations today, and last 5 years, 6 years, it is getting improved, and RBI is mandating banks to put in controls so that cyber attacks can be minimized. So similar efforts are really required in the pharma industry also. Currently, what happens is pharma is heavily regulated, and it is, as I said in the earlier question, that it is more on quality-centric approach. And governments are inspecting, various governments from various countries do inspect, audit the pharma industry. However, it is focused on GMP and quality, where cybersecurity related issues are not being focused, or they are not being keenly looked into. Few areas are looked into, like data integrity, backups, or you can see virus related controls, access controls. Those are really seen, but beyond that, where it really impacts in terms of manufacturing, people are still not focused on auditing or inspecting those kind of controls. And I feel that is where the improvement is required from governments, especially governments. Each country can have, or a GMP guideline can include more cybersecurity related controls, so that this gets built up very easily. Pharma has grown up very big way from quality perspective. It is extremely matured practice today. However, same thing can be applied to building certain controls into these GMP requirements. That will help a lot from overall industry hygiene in terms of cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think the question is extremely relevant, and the reply from Mr. Kadaukar was also very, very relevant, because we in India we have been looking at cybersecurity on various sectors, in various sectors. And what we have observed, that the government has policies related to IT security, which is coming from Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, METI. And this is also being further adapted for critical infrastructure, which is like power, generation, distribution, etc., and all that. Because severe incidents have happened over there, so the government feels that those infrastructures need to be protected. But I feel pharmaceutical is also one of the very critical manufacturing sectors in the country. And I also feel that guidelines like what is coming up in the Europe now, somewhere in October 2025, Europe has to shift to NIS2 standards, and in which the asset owner, which is the end user who's actually producing the pharmaceutical drugs or chemicals, APIs, is also going to be penalized if in case there is a data breach or a cybersecurity attack. In India, at the moment, there are some guidelines which are laid down by SEBI. For example, if you're a listed company on the stock exchange, and if there is any cyber incident that happens, you need to immediately report it within the 4 hours to the the exchange, and also report the same to the CERT-in, so that the forensics can be done. But I completely agree with Mr. Atul that we need these guidelines very clear, more in a black and white method, for the industry to actually adapt and then transform themselves in this space.
Thank you very much, Vivek and Atul. Very, very important, given the importance of cybersecurity and given the increased digitalization which is happening today. And also, India is a manufacturing hub in the pharma sector, and hence it becomes very, very important that the clear, definite guidelines have to be evolved like other critical sectors, as you mentioned, Paul. So thank you very much for this. Now we move on. What are the most effective methods to protect against unauthorized access, data breaches, inside threats, and cyber attacks? What strategy will you recommend to contain such threats? Again, we will start with you. Over to Yusuf, and over to you, Vivek.
Sure. So I would like to kind of explain step-by-step process of implementing certain cybersecurity controls. So for that, I would just like to share my screen and put you through to one slide. So what is very important, that we have to understand the process of cybersecurity in a very step-by-step method. We need to look at identify, protect, detect, and defend, recover, and continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is obviously the most important part. But if you look at the first phase, so there are totally 6 phases of kind of this journey that we have plotted it out. And in the phase 1, this is a very important phase where we say that we want to know where do I stand and where do I want to go. So basically, this is a very high level gap assessment that needs to be done, in which you could use various methods of IEC 62443 assessment or the 27001 ISM assessment. But this cybersecurity high-level gap assessment actually helps you to understand what are the gaps between the policies which have been laid down and what has been followed. Then we come to phase 2, where we get into asset identification, because you cannot protect what you can't see, right? You need to see, you need to look at the assets, and then only once you have the visibility, you can protect those devices. And in phase 3, we look at how can we secure the overall environment. So in this phase, there are many steps. For example, many organizations have flat networks, flat OT networks. Network segmentation could be one of the important parameters. Mr. Atul mentioned a very important factor in the space of COVID. What happened was manufacturing actually opened up to remote access, and many of the cyber attacks came in, or many of the ransomware attacks came in because of the remote access, insecure remote accesses that many organizations did. Remote access could be one of the very critical aspects where you need a proper strategy to, have a secure connectivity from the remote to the plant. In phase 4, we look at how are these controls working. We employ or deploy certain sensors in the network which continuously keeps checking the traffic, checking what is actually happening, how is the traffic between the systems running, between the IT OT running, and there is threat mitigation and response. But still, there is no silver bullet to cybersecurity. Whatever policies, whatever checks you may have, you may still be attacked. So you need a very strong business continuity plan and a disaster recovery plan, and this falls back to the continuous improvement. Last but not the least, very important aspect on this slide is the orange dots. And these dots are basically training, simulation, and awareness. I think Mr. Atul also gave this point a very important stress, that today policies are available, but the awareness is probably not there in the organization. And that also could be one of the potential threats because of which such attacks could happen. Over to you. Yeah.
A very important point, that business continuity plans are very important. And yes, policy may be there, but if there is no awareness, that policy may not have many. Very important thing forward. Yes, Yusuf.
Thank you so much. I think Vivek has actually explained the entire process of the various phases that we need to take an approach. Generally, we usually don't structure these phases because of that amount of business and the go-to-market demands of the business. We have to go by certain phases before and after, right? For example, if there's a new line which is coming up in your pharma manufacturing site, the first thing that you would need to actually configure is the remote access, right? Because that's where you will create those configuration, and the vendor who's having control, supposed to provide the services, he has to take control of the your fashion. But I think nevertheless, I would definitely focus on a few areas to ultimately protect data breaches, insider threats, unauthorized access, right? And of course, ultimately cyber attack. So first is that the strong authentication and access control is a must, right? You know that MFA has been a great savior for any organization till now, because that's how even the password get compromised. If I have MFA in place, I would be able to protect or restrict the access to my critical systems, right? So it's very essential that the first thing is the multi-factor authentication has to be enabled. Unless if you don't enable it, I think you're not doing the right set of approach. And of course, within the same area, right? So role-based access is something is so important that whoever have access to the permission, whether the access is required or not, whether he need that access or not. So how can we actually implement the need to know basis, have least privilege access to the resources that are critical part of my business, right? I don't want to give open access to everyone, right? I know the current challenges in the current manufacturing industries, especially at the engineering side. Everybody have access to admin, right? Even those users, the machines, the instrumentation machines, and the devices don't have the capability for unique admin privileges, right? I don't know if there's certain analytical machine, the raw data has to be generated in a pharma discovery, right? I've seen many machines, they don't have even individual login IDs. So how would I identify that which raw data was generated by which scientist, right? And because there are limitations, there are actually limitation from concurrent licenses. So they are very expensive license. So usually companies don't go by actually creating individual login IDs for those analytical and research machines, right? So it's very essential to actually lay down that clear distinction of who has access to what. Because pharma industry is something that you need to have a perfect quality assurance. That's what pharma industries, the basic premise of pharma industries, whether you talk about drug discovery in chemistry or biology, or you can say in research as well. Identification of who has done what is very important. The third part is,
yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Is the your current machines in the industry, especially in the OT environment, they don't have remote access per se because they are usually air gap. But now COVID and of course the cost of supporting those instruments is becoming a major factor, because if your systems are air gap, it means that the vendor has to come to the site and do the maintenance and upgrades. Now the business is moving out from that. How can we give secure remote access, right? So it's highly essential now to just don't give VPN access, focus on just-in-time access and very limited access that need to be provided. And last but the least is the incident response plan. If anything goes wrong, your detective and response process should be always up to date and highly responsive, especially in the pharma industry. So I think that's what my perspective to cover how you want to protect your industry from the cyber attacks.
Excellent, Yusuf, and you elaborated very clearly in number of steps what needs to be done. Over to Atul.
Yeah, I think Vivek and Yusuf has talked, all things. To sum up this access control pointedly, I would like to mention three things very important. And the first one is extremely important is privilege identity management, where, administrators use the systems and administrator privileges needs to be monitored, controlled very well. That's very important. So this kind of solution can give very, good amount of control over the risk. Privilege identity management. Then second is, of course, remote access for vendors or partners or whosoever distributors. And the third thing is overall idea, which can help because pharma uses different kind of applications. And each application requires different kind of logins. Many a times applications are not having single username and password, so people have to remember many passwords. All that thing creates complications, and therefore if you focus on these three things from access control perspective, I think that will give good amount of risk mitigation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Atul. In fact, all of you focused on access control and remote access control is very, very important. And that has been one of the source of many of the cyber attacks. Thank you very much for highlighting this. I will now go to Vivek. What are the disadvantages of relying on legacy systems to prevent security breaches? How can this be mitigated using modern, robust technology? In fact, we are talking of a technology word.
Yes.
And we need to use robust technology to contain cyber attacks.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. And actually, this is a very relevant point. When we started this whole show, we discussed this, that today, what is very important for the pharma industry is they have always focused on quality. Yeah, they have not focused on the asset quality or the type of assets which are actually producing that quality. So, but naturally, since pharma has moved or has had multiple iterations in manufacturing, the complete landscape, you would see that there are a lot of underlying assets which are legacy assets. Now, typically, you cannot give away or you cannot do away with these assets. These assets are doing a very important task. So, in my opinion, these assets do not, or they cannot create a disadvantage to the whole manufacturing process. They are required. They are certainly there because they are giving certain advantage. But from a cybersecurity perspective, yes, they are vulnerable. And I would just like to share my opinion through one slide, which is basically the OT security, maturity curve. Yeah, I'll just put it in the presentation mode. So if you look at where this, we saw the 6 phases in the previous slide, and look, when we start, many organizations don't know where to start from. And if we start with the basics, and we've spoken this, Dr. Yusuf as well as Mr. Atul has also spoken about this, that initial training on cyber concepts and user awareness is extremely important. But there is one thing that I spoke about in the last slide, which was asset inventory, asset discovery. It's very important for us to know what assets are there on the shop floor. And once you have an asset inventory, you actually come to know which are the legacy assets and how they could be protected. So some of the methodologies that are there available, by previous speakers have already spoken about it, but specifically endpoint hardening and ensuring that the result that you've got from the asset inventory, and if that particular asset is a legacy asset, you need to ensure that you harden that endpoint. Yeah, the first important part is hardening that endpoint using various controls, like for example, blocking the USB ports, not using certain softwares on that particular PC or that particular control station. But still, one very important factor is, even after you may do an endpoint hardening, that asset, since it's a legacy asset, it is carrying a legacy OS. It's carrying a legacy operating system which is no more available, or patches are not available. So the second most important part is you need to back it up. You need to ensure that you have the latest and the best and the tested backups of these endpoints at any time available, so that if that endpoint goes down in case of an attack, you are quickly able to bring that backup in, and you can put it in operation. And the third most important piece is you still can be attacked, right? After doing all these things, is a defense in depth concept. Means you need to actually cocoon that particular endpoint or that legacy asset in such a way that you restrict access of that asset from that network to an external network or within the plant, or you could have, a kind of a zero trust architecture in which you actually give role-based access control. Yeah, that means whenever anybody is connecting to that asset from an external network or an internal network, that person should be authorized to connect. So there are several methods in which you can actually protect legacy assets in the OT. Yeah. And then if you look at the, once you have done this, you could build on the basics. You could then create and roll out a OT cyber program. You can build in, you can start segmenting your network. You could begin to automate monitoring by putting in a central security logging management, intrusion detection system. And you could also go in for, on the highest level of maturity, you could also go in for intrusion prevention systems, etc. and all that. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks so much, Vivek. It is very, very important you address a very, very important issue, because legacy system, many of the organizations will carry on. And how do we ensure cyber security using legacy systems? Now I will move on to with the increasing interconnectedness, because that is again the order of the day in the pharma supply chain. How to and what are the risks which are associated with that interconnectedness? Because that is again a very, very relevant issue. And I would request Dr. Yusuf, you to handle this issue.
It's a very, very critical question when it comes to the supply chain of your entire ecosystem that you deliver and manage your operations, right? Which includes your OT systems, your applications who are serving the OT environments, right? So it's a big supply chain, and pharmaceutical industry is highly dependent on the supply chain, right? So which means, and if you talk about interconnectedness, right? So it introduces both opportunities and risk, right? So there's always an opportunity to grow, improve the turn, go to market. And of course, while you tend to actually be faster in providing the outcomes, there would be associated underlying risk that you need to ensure that you identify and then mitigate. So I think the first thing is the supply chain complexity, right? So if you see that as a pharma supply chain, there is becoming more global and more intricate. They involve multiple suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, logistic partners, right? And which means that your attack surface significantly widens, right? Each link in this supply chain have potential vulnerability, and any compromise at any point can impact your entire ecosystem, right? So the complexity is growing because I need my OT systems to be up and running, 24/7 support. If it fails, then I should have a support. My applications, which are serving my analytical, my logbooks, which are managed digitally, right? So it becomes, there's a lot of demand which is getting generated. So there's no more time to actually, if there's a problem, that I can wait for 2 to 3 days to the supplier to come to the manufacturing unit and resolve the issue, which means that your connectivity is a major requirement in order to sustain and be resilient within your manufacturing ecosystems, right? And a second part is the third party risk, right? So which means that you are collaborating with so many third parties, contractors and service provider, and it's very common in pharmaceutical industries. However, these external entities may have varying security practice. I don't know what my suppliers' internal controls are working or not, whether they have sufficient robust cybersecurity measures. I don't know, right? I'm not aware of it. And especially these become significant weak points that attackers can easily exploit. Because many of the, if you see the recent attack in US chain healthcare was because of one of the suppliers' weak controls were not efficient. So hackers were able to actually exploit this weakness in the supply chain. So I think this is most important aspect that organizations should really focus is the third party risk that I'm living with in the current ecosystem. The third part is the data exchange and communication. So a lot of data gets seamless exchange between your supply chain partners, right? Whether I'm sharing a sensitive information such as drug formulas, clinical trial results, patient data, right? So there's a lot of data which gets transacted. So if it's so inadequate encryption, and of course there's a lot of APIs which are been talking to each other between my systems and the supply chain system, right? If it gets misconfigured, then you bound to can have the data leaks or unauthorized access. So very essential to ensure that we need to protect the exchange of data, monitor the data, and then protect my APIs across the entire supply chain, right? So, and very importantly, that these risks has to be mitigated, right? Right from the start of your manufacturing system, right? If your old system, that we need to do a risk assessment to see that where the data gets exchanged, who is access to it, what level of protection controls are being put in place, right? So, and fourth most important is the counterfeit drugs and tampering. So how this, because your suppliers are involved in your business processes, there's you bound to actually get tampering of your authenticity of drugs, right? Cyber criminal can introduce counterfeit drugs into your system, right? They can poison your formulas, and once you poison the formulas and the molecule, you are bound to actually get manufactured and see the impact, right? Because human life is involved in this entire life cycle, right? So tampering with drug formulas during transit or storage can seriously occur. And of course, the fifth point, what I want to talk is the intellectual property that you generate, right? How the attackers are looking or the competitors are looking to steal your intellectual property, right? And the weakest link is the people who are actually generating those, right? So a very easily compromised supply chain can leak valuable IP and affecting companies' reputation in the market, right? So I would say that these five are top. Apart from that, ransomware and regulatory compliances will continue to happen when you talk about FDA. CFR 1121 is the major requirement for safeguarding of the electronic records. I think that is something that we need to see that ensure that our supplier also follow those GMP practices across.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. In fact, it is very, very insightful. Ours is an interconnected industry. We operate in a collaborative world, and the point you were saying, data exchange is very common in our industry. Tampering the products again is increasing, and intellectual property. Very, very important question, and very valid question for all of us who are part of this industry. We will come to the next question, which is a very, very important question. And building on what Dr. Yusuf has been saying is what are the cyber security opportunities and difficulties faced by pharma business in India? Yes, we are increasing digitalization, but at the same time, cyber security risk is very high. So there are opportunities and there are difficulties. I will start with Vivek and then over to you, Vivek.
Sure. Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. And it is in perfect sequence to what Dr. Yusuf mentioned in the previous question, that today no industry is, disconnected, I would say. We are all living in an interconnected world, and supply chain risks is one of the biggest risk, I would say, where pharmaceutical companies or pharmaceutical organizations are facing today. But I would just like to highlight 3 points in this question. The first point is, what really happens to an organization when it gets attacked? Yeah. First and foremost, you lose credibility. Yeah. The people who are actually buying your drugs or buying your medicines, actually, if they come to know that their manufacturer has been attacked and the data has been compromised, the brand value of that organization could come down. Apart from facing fines and regulatory compliance checks, etc., and many a times we have heard that export consignments also are stopped because of proper checks and balances related to cybersecurity, information security not being there. So brand value can get affected. This is my one of the key points that I would like to highlight. The second important point is, today pharmaceutical organizations are facing a challenge because they have a mix of assets, and the pace at which pharmaceutical industry has adopted to digitalization, and especially in the last 3-4 years, because of all thanks to COVID, it has been phenomenal. So the rate at which pharmaceutical industries are digitalizing is exponential, and if you look at the adaptation to cybersecurity in this, it is not at that same pace. So, but naturally, many organizations have digitalized, keeping cybersecurity as not as the topmost priority. Yeah. And this is also one of the challenges many pharmaceutical organizations are facing. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not all negative. There could be, and this is the advantage that pharmaceutical industries have, because if you have digitalized your operations or digitized your operations, you could put in the checks and balances at any given point of time. The balances that Dr. Yusuf mentioned, Mr. Atul mentioned, if there is a lot of awareness trainings, people are made aware of how to use systems, not to share passwords, not to use, not to log into systems without multi-factor authentication. So I feel that the opportunity for cybersecurity is immense. Yeah. And the last point which I would like to mention, the adoption of cybersecurity will speed up due to regulations also. So FDA has also adapted to IEC 62443 cybersecurity regulations. So under the 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, where they're doing the asset integrity checks, the data integrity checks, electronic batch records, etc., they're also looking at the asset life cycle. So many checks and balances, I'm sure, will come, and that is also a very huge opportunity for cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivek. Over to you, Atul.
Yeah, to take what Vivek said further, what we saw is last 2 years, 3 years, tremendous amount of focus is on to digitization, digital transformation, and to do so, a lot of application, they are coming out on the cloud-based access. So your deployment time and transformation happens extremely fast. You see quality control applications which never thought of going on cloud, quality assurance applications, production applications. Many of the people who actually have these applications, and traditionally they were on premises, they all have kind of moving on to cloud. You have SAP HANA now. You need to access on cloud. So many applications are going on cloud. And applications are allowing companies to transform very quickly. Now there lies an opportunity for cybersecurity, because all going on to cloud, you need to relook at how the whole thing is structured, because the application can be accessed by the employee from the premises and as well as when he goes out, he can access. So you need to figure out the ways to, govern this whole cloud applications, cloud instances. And that is going to be a very big, opportunity for cybersecurity. But the difficulty again is, are you really ready to, allocate budgets? Budgets, as you can see, traditionally pharma companies were not very aggressive in investing in cybersecurity. So convincing to management, taking budgets, implementing those technology solutions to control the, cloud access. All that thing is going to be challenges faced by various stakeholders, CISOs across the pharma. And that's it. Thank you.
A very, very important point, Atul, the question of budget. And this is the right time to raise that issue because we are at the beginning of the new financial year. The importance of digitalization, the importance of cybersecurity, and the importance of allocating right kind of resources so we maximize the potential of digitalization. Coming to you, Atul, what are the key takeaways for the Indian pharma or chemical companies which they should consider while implementing the cybersecurity? Over to you, Atul.
Yeah, thanks. Very important question. The principles remains the same, and I always emphasize on three pillars of security: people, process, and technology. One needs to really look at all the three elements of security, identify the issues in each set, that is your own environment. What are the things that are missing in these three pillars? Then plan and improve them over the period of time. One should make 3 to 5 years plan and break it down to quarterly, monthly plan in terms of how improvements can happen. You can start with very quick wins like, not investing much, but finding out what can close those gaps very quickly and start working on those things. Internal audits also help in a very big way in terms of improvement. So certain process improvement also can help and take a significant leap in terms of improving the cybersecurity. The second thing is using good tools for user awareness will help significantly. Creating, phishing simulation attacks, finding out the risky users, training them specifically, and keeping in touch with users on a continuous basis. That will help in a big way. And we kept on talking right from the first question that user awareness is significantly important, and this issue can be resolved using very good phishing simulation tools which are available today. Then one needs to have extremely good security operations center for incident detection, response, and if possible, build a forensics capacity so that you can, kind of analyze and respond to the threats there and there itself. Today, you have, good amount of technology for endpoint detection response. Then you have cloud access, remote access. All those technologies are very much important in terms of improving the overall cybersecurity posture. Now, what happens is earlier we had only, internal network to be reviewed, but today you need to look on complete internet in terms of who is monitoring you and what is happening. And these tools like brand monitoring tool or threat intelligence tools helps you to, proactively act on various issues. If you see, typo-spotted domains is a big issue for big brand companies where people are, registering look-alike domain names and, they start using those to, launch phishing attacks. These kind of things can be, proactively monitored, and you can take actions on them very quickly. So these new techniques should be used, to improve and set the entire process. We have very good now ISO 27000 improving the process. We have now 2022 version, which is available with new controls, and that can also help, in terms of improving the processes. This whole framework allows you to do very good internal audits, as well as improve the key performance areas. You can define and improve on those. So these are few things which I would like to mention. Of course, there is continuous improvement, because security is a continuous goal. It's not something which will end with doing something or some certification, some compliance, some GMP audit. It's not going to stop at that. One needs to really look at continuous improvement and take it from there. That's what I feel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Atul. And as you rightly said, continuous improvement is fundamental in this area. I will ask Vijender for his comments because key takeaways are important for implementing the system.
So, one thing which is very common, whether you talk about pharma or you talk about chemical industry or you talk about any other verticals or, corporates, you must follow, the best practices. That is very, that is a thumb rule. And without that, I mean, whatever you do, you have best tools, best, techniques, best control and good resources, but that doesn't work. So following a best practice is, very important. And when you talk about Indian pharmaceutical companies or chemical companies, they should consider, a few points which are again very basic but very strategic points in terms of cybersecurity. The first is you have to conduct regular risk assessment. You must do regular risk assessment to identify and assess potential vulnerabilities, right, and threats what you have in your digital infrastructure. And that also gives you, high level visibility of your risk landscape. So the first point is to conduct regular risk assessment. Second point is to implement robust security measures. Again, you must have, firewall, antivirus software, intrusion detection systems to protect your against cyber attacks. And apart from that, I mean, considering the way threat landscape has evolved nowadays, you also need to train your employees. So train employees, educate them on cybersecurity best practices. And how to identify and avoid phishing and ransomware attacks and all. So awareness and training plays very crucial role in cybersecurity chain, because if you see the data what we have, 95% cyber attacks only happens due to human error. So just to avoid that, we must have a robust training program for our employees. And the fourth point is have a good response plan and tried and tested response plan. So we have to develop and regularly update a response plan to quickly and effectively respond to the cyber attack. And the last but not the least is to stay up to date. Keep abreast of the latest cyber technology trends and threats and update security measures accordingly. So, I mean, in cybersecurity, nothing is, static. So your strategy should also be not strategic. It has to be a dynamic, and multi-layer approach following all industry standards, best practices can protect you from these type of attacks, what we have seen during this pandemic and even after pandemic.
So before we close, I will also ask Vivek for his comments and key takeaways, which he will say as far as implementing cybersecurity is concerned. Over to you, Vivek.
Yeah, thanks. So I think Mr. Atul has summed it up very well. I would say two important takeaways. And the first is, and sorry I'm repeating this, but creating the right awareness, identifying the right workforce who should have the right awareness is also very important. Yeah. Many organizations are creating cybersecurity training programs, but we need to create something for the manufacturing setup. Because in the manufacturing setup, the biggest challenge is the users are not very familiar with the controls, with the endpoints that are there in the IT space. So I would say that a slightly tweaked training program, awareness program for only the manufacturing set of the fraternity is very important. Second thing is it has to be a step-by-step process. And many organizations today are trying to jump the gun and trying to, implement certain tools which are coming from the IT, and they come directly and implement those tools in OT. I think this is also one of the major areas where we should look at. First, we should do a gap assessment. I think doing a gap assessment will give you a very good, overview. It's just like a medical checkup. Rather than just going to the pharmacy and asking the pharmacist for a drug and taking that drug without a prescription, it's just like how you're using a tool without really understanding what are the underlying problems in your manufacturing space. So you need to get a health check, right? You need to get your health check. And once you have the health check, then you know what medicines you can take. So I think cybersecurity has the same, methodology. It's better to get a high-level gap assessment done, and then you can implement the right technologies or take the next steps. And this also helps in budget planning, because Mr. Atul said the right thing. Today, budgets are a constraint. Management doesn't want to spend that maybe $1 million on cybersecurity, yeah, and it's not required, because if you have a gap assessment done, then you know which are the important areas where you need to focus, and once you know them, you can actually take it one by one, depending on how risky it is to your business. So gap assessment, risk analysis is very important for you to, chart your way in the cyber journey. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this outstanding discussion. In fact, it has been very, very insightful. I would like to only conclude by saying that digitization is fundamental for transforming the organization. There is no way but to move up the value chain by using cybersecurity. We have to strike the right balance between efficiency and security. Awareness is fundamental, and as rightly said, we have to do gap analysis, risk assessment, then allocate resources in terms of budget. It is a top management agenda. And for everyone in the pharma industry, it is important that we realize the significance of it. We couldn't have better panel than this for 100 years experience in this going forward. And I'm sure it will be a very important landmark move ahead in the journey of cybersecurity. All the very best to you, and thank you very much for being part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Atul.
Thanks.
See you soon.